Welcome to Magical Monday Live. I am Ivy. I am your hostess. If you don't know who I am a spiritual coach and a magical mentor. I am also a Coven High Priestess, and I do readings and healings and all of that good stuff as well. So every Monday, I try to make it every Monday. Every Monday I come on and I speak anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour on a topic. And today's topic is wording. Now what this is, it's about safety inside and outside of the ritual circle. So today I'm going to talk to you about like physical safety and ethereal safety. So I just going to go ahead and just jump right in and get started, and let's talk about physical safety. If you are catching the replay, just if you don't mind, just type replay, even if you don't comment at all. Other than that, that's great. That really helps me out. But here's my question to you, whether you're on a replay or whether you're watching this live. Have you ever been injured or hurt, even a minor injury, in ritual? Like your physical body somehow was hurt? I can tell you for myself, I have tripped over things. When we've got tapestries and stuff on the ground, I've definitely, if there's something to trip over, this girl is going to find it. So if somebody's going to set something on fire, it also might be me. So I really want to talk about how important this physical safety is, because you can create your energetic container. You can plan your ritual. You can make sure everything is like perfect. So it will go just like you want. But if you are not practicing good like safety, then you might have some bad things happen to you. So like hurting yourself or setting your house on fire or something like that. So let's just talk about altar safety. So the first thing I want to talk about, when we see these altar setups, if you're in any sort of beginners groups, there's always somebody who's asking, hey, I'm new, I want to set up my altar. Do you have an altar placement map or graphic, or how do I set my altar up? And people will almost always post a graphic where the altar is facing north, and you've got the earth right in front. You've got the candle next to you. You've got water and you've got salt. And the first thing that I always say is, do not put your candle there. I don't care if you're trying to be like put the elements in, the placement, where they are on your altar, like the earth goes in the north and the fire goes in the south. Because for everything you're doing in that ritual, you are going to be reaching past that candle. Let me do an offering. Let me put something on the pentacle. Let me raise up a chalice. So you don't want fire that close to you. Also, if you have a smaller space and you are trying to read your ritual script, especially if you have like a taper candle, you might just catch your script on fire. It's happened. Excuse me. So be really careful about where you're placing your candles. I like to place illumination candles kind of toward the back of the altar, so it kind of illuminates the whole altar. I might have like one candle that's closer to me, but it's usually like a low level candle. So just be really careful about where you are placing all of your candles, because if you have to reach past it, especially if you're like, look at my glorious cloak with its bell sleeves, it's going to go right into that candle flame, and then you will catch yourself on fire. I have seen that happen. I have prevented that from happening for people. So just be really, really careful about where the placement is of your candles. I'm sorry, it's been a long day, kind of sleepy. All right. I'm gonna go from candles to fire safety, period. So if you do a lot of fire stuff, buy a fire extinguisher. You can buy like little tiny ones. I have a little one right here. Where are you, little guy? I have one like this big. It was like 20 bucks or something. It's probably expired now. I should probably check that out. But it's pull the tab and then spray it. That's it. And this makes me feel a lot more safe when I'm doing ritual. So sometimes I'll bring this outside if we're doing like a fire heavy ritual. You know, if you're doing a bonfire at a park or a beach, you're probably okay. And we'll talk about that in a second. But having a fire extinguisher, especially something that's so cheap, and it can give you such a good peace of mind. Okay. If you are having a bonfire, make sure you are putting it in a fire pit. If you are creating your own fire pit, because that's the kind of campground you're at, and I've been at that kind of campground, make sure you definitely surround it with rocks. You definitely have a lot of dirt, and you're nowhere near anything that can catch fire, because that's really, really important. When you're getting ready to finish up, make sure the fire's all the way out. Like, no heat should be coming from the fire. You can scoop dirt on it. It's always good to have like a little camp shovel if that's something that you are doing if you're camping, or if you're not camping. If you're doing something at the beach, you still want to have something that you can put on top of those hot coals, because you know, some drunk person could stumble into it after you leave. So besides bonfires, there's another type of fire that we see often in ritual, and it's a cauldron fire. And you might have seen this. It's like you have your little cauldron, or your big cauldron, I guess. But most of the time we have these like tabletop cauldrons, and there's fire, like real fire in it. And it's really easy to do. You just need salt or sand at the bottom. You pour regular alcohol, like rubbing alcohol, and you light it, and there's like a little alcohol fire. And it's a really cool like effect. But these can also get to be a little out of control. Something that I learned the hard way is that because I had been doing like tiny baby cauldron fires, and I had one in a cauldron that was this big, and I still like filled it up about the same amount with alcohol, and I lit it, and the flame went so high it almost hit the ceiling, and I was like froze. I don't do fight or flight. I just freeze. Like, this isn't happening. But lucky for me, one of my lovely friends and coven sisters was there to be like, you should probably put a lid on that, because I had the lid. So if you do a cauldron fire, number one, always practice it outdoors first. Even if you think that you know how it's going to go, because it was perfect in this cauldron and you're switching it up for a different cauldron or a different sort of vessel, always practice outside first. And don't practice it on like on a table or something that's not, you know, heat proof. Like, don't do it on a glass table. Don't do it on plastic. I've got a big old scorch mark, melty spot where we did a fire thing on my plastic table. So don't do that. Always practice it first outside. Remember, the more alcohol you put in there, the more fire you're going to get. And if you do like a wide cauldron, the higher the flame can be. So just be very careful with that. And I always suggest that you have the lid that you can just put on it, because it will just put that fire out. And then you will not almost burn down your apartment complex. Okay? So that's a little bit about fire safety. Now let's talk about outdoor rituals. A lot of us don't have really like conducive spaces for like inside spaces for us to like do ritual all the time. So a lot of times we want to go outside. Also, we might want to go where the nature is, so that we can connect, whether it's with the moon or whether it's with the sun and the solstices and the equinoxes, etc. So the first thing you want to do is you want to look at the ground, and you want to make sure that there's nothing sharp there. That could be glass, that could be anything. It could be rocks, it could be bugs, I don't know, whatever is sharp. Just make sure that people are not going to be stepping on things that are dangerous. A lot of pagans and witches, we like to take our shoes off. We like to be barefoot, especially if there's grass. So just kind of do a sweep and see if there's anything anybody's going to get hurt on. If you are doing an outdoor ritual, make sure you are not trespassing on other people's property, because that is just inviting some problems and headaches that you don't want. And when you're outside, you are going to be exposed to the sun. So just make sure that you bring sunscreen and protect your body. Like we think about safety, we think about hurting ourselves, but I can't tell you how many times I've walked away like really sunburned because I thought a ritual was going to last 15 minutes and it ended up being like an hour. So make sure you have sunscreen. I always say like bring an extra sunscreen, because there are people who are going to forget. And if you want to be a kind person, do that. In public, if you are doing an outdoor ritual in public, choose a place with as much privacy as possible. Because sometimes, you know, we might not have a backyard. We might be in an apartment. I used to be in an apartment. So we might have to end up doing ritual at parks, and that's fine. And you can completely do that, and that's fine. I've done it with no problems. I've done it with huge problems. But just make sure that you are kind of away from all of the other stuff that's happening, especially if you're at a park. If people are playing soccer, don't set your ritual up at the edge of their soccer field and get mad when somebody kicks a ball through your ritual space. You know, just be mindful of other people and what they're doing as well. Make sure you are obeying all of the laws. If the laws say don't have any open flames, don't light candles, then don't do that. Because that is just another excuse for somebody to hassle you. And you don't want that, because you're not trying to be in everybody's face. You're not trying to have all of the attention on you. You're just trying to do your like prayer circle, your ritual circle, your honoring, your devotional, like whatever it is you're doing. You don't need to draw attention to yourself by breaking any laws. So make sure you are not breaking any of those laws. And also, I suggest you have a plan on what you're going to do if somebody does interrupt you. What are you going to do if somebody interrupts you? What are you going to do if somebody accosts you, yells at you, says that you're a devil worshiper? Like, have some sort of plan on like what that's going to look like, what that could look like, and how you would handle that. It happened to me. I was with my coven way back in the beginning, and like about 15 years ago. We were in a park that I loved. It was my favorite park at the time. And we were doing a ritual. We did have candles, although we had like the novena candles that really are very, very safe. But it didn't even matter whether we had candles or not, honestly. This guy had it out for us when we were setting up. I saw him staring at us from his car, and I knew that was going to be a problem. So we started our ritual. We did our ritual. He did come up to us and talk and like say things to us. And I was just very polite. And I said, you need to step back. And he was like, don't raise your hand at me. He was very scared. It made me giggle internally. He ended up calling the cops on us. And I knew that that's what the next step was. So we skipped one part of our ritual. We just kind of finished up a little earlier, and we were packing up the cars. And the cops roll up, these two young men, and they were like, we heard that there are witches dancing naked in the park. I'm like, well, unfortunately for you, you did not, or maybe fortunately, you know, you were misinformed. You know, we were having a prayer circle, and they were like, well, that's dumb. Not that we were dumb, but that the guy had a huge conniption fit that we are worshiping the devil in the local park. So just kind of know, and I knew going in, like, if this happens, then I'm going to react like this, and I'm going to, you know, do X, Y, Z. I'm going to be very polite. I'm going to be very, like, strongly polite and very direct with somebody. But I'll tell you that circle casting worked. He did not cross our circle line. He stopped right up where our circle was. So you might want to think about casting circle. And we'll talk about that in a second when we talk about ritual and ethereal safety. So again, just try to stay out of the way of other people and have a kind of a plan of what you're going to do if you do get interrupted. I mean, it's so weird because you don't know how you're going to feel until it actually happens to you. And if you're by yourself, like, it can be really scary. So you might want to make sure you have something like pepper spray if you do get like actually physically accosted. I was with several other people at the time, so it was not as scary, but it doesn't hurt to have, especially it doesn't hurt to have people who are outside of your ritual, like significant others or somebody who can talk to people who want to come up and start some shit. Because we've done that once too, I think. Like, now that I'm talking about it, I feel like people have come up and we had somebody who, like a boyfriend or something, that talked to them. But, you know, just kind of have an idea of what you're going to do if something does happen. For indoor rituals, you are kind of safer in that you're not going to step on any glass probably, whatever. But do look out for slippery rugs. Do look out for slippery floors. loose floorboards, anything that you can trip over. If you plan to do any dancing and you're going to raise your arms up, make sure there's not like a ceiling fan for you to crack your arm, you know, against. So just be really cognizant of what it is you're going to do in your ritual. Like, you probably wouldn't want to do a circle dance in this tiny space. So make sure your space kind of fits what you're actually going to do as part of your ritual. Okay? All right. So let's talk about ethereal safety. Safety, like inside the circle. Okay, let me have a sip of this. I'm getting parched. I'm talking so much. Okay. One of the most important things to realize is that, number one, there aren't, at least in my experience, there aren't entities that are out there just waiting for you to do spell work and they're going to come and psychically attack you. That's usually not something that occurs. That's what a lot of people are afraid about of, you know, happening. And that, I think that keeps people from doing rituals and from doing spells, but that's just really not the case. The most important thing, in my opinion, for like inside ritual ethereal safety is to go into your ritual with a very clear intention. You know what you're going to do in your ritual. You kind of have a plan. If you're one of those spontaneous ritual people, you still have a very clear intention, or you have everything completely written out, but just go in there knowing what it is you want to do and feeling confident in that. Also know what you're doing. Don't half-ass something. You know, you need to be confident. And see how sometimes you might have some self-doubt, but like, oh, this might not work. But really, you want to kind of not be afraid. I'll talk about that in just a second. But really, Isaac Bonowitz was a druid, and he has like several books out. And two books of his, I think, actually talks about these magical laws. And it's something that I teach in my program about like analysis and things like that. But there's a law called this law of knowledge, right? So you want to know what you're doing. Know what you're doing before you start to do it. Also, in the witch's pyramid, there is one side that is to know, right? So knowledge is very, very important. Does that mean you have to read all of these books before you do anything? No, but if you're going to do something, know how to do it. Whether that's a consecration, you know, do some research, figure out how you're going to do what you're going to do. You don't want to sit in your ritual, just be like, I don't really know what I'm doing, and like have all this like self-doubt and like confusion. And you want to be very clear, very centered and grounded, and then just do it. So, excuse me. So that's another thing. You want to ground and center so that your energy isn't all like wackadoo, right? Because again, you have clear intention, you have things you need to get done. You're doing a ritual for a purpose, not just to fuck around. So be grounded, ground and center yourself before you start your ritual work, so that your energy is tight, it's grounded, it's in your center, and it's ready to do what you want it to do, and it's not like hovering all over the place. Also, do your best to remove any personal resistance. So again, that's like, I'm afraid, I'm scared something's gonna come here, I'm scared of the dark, and I'm doing my ritual in the dark. Don't do that. If you're afraid of the dark, you don't have to do your ritual in the dark. You want to eliminate that fear energy as much as you can. And as somebody who has lived with spirits here, my other apartment, you know, I've had spirit experiences my whole life. And I will tell you, if you're scared, you're like manifesting all of this energy that spirits can use to manifest themselves. So that might be like, hey, now I see something, or hey, something moved by itself, or now there's knocking on my walls, or whatever. So if you start to feel that fear energy, you want to make sure that you kind of ground all that. Take a deep breath and do your best to chill out and center yourself. Because when you get all scared of things, and we all get scared, right? We're all like, what is that? Like, you know, you might see something that is crazy and might really freak you out. It happens even to somebody like me. Like, I have seen spirits. I feel like I've done a lot of things. I've experienced a lot of things, but still something, that doesn't mean I'm never scared. Like sometimes, I mean, not recently, but you see something. If you actually see an actual ghost, you're like, oh, that's kind of scary. And you're just like, and you deal with it. So just do your very best to kind of ground and center. And I'm not saying that spirits are going to come because you lit a candle and prayed to the goddess, because that's not really what usually happens. But if you are in a house where like spirits are things, if you have ghosts, if you, hear things, and you're, kind of opening yourself up a little bit. And especially if you get freaked out, if you freak yourself out, you're going to give off this energy, and that will help them manifest, which is not what you probably want. So just do your best to ground and center. And don't let self-doubt, because I feel like self-doubt and fear can kind of just play off of one another. Just to work on controlling your thoughts. I am safe here. I am in a safe space. Whatever you need to do to calm yourself down, do that. Because you don't want that energy floating around for other things to use. Okay? So if you are new, especially, and you have a lot of fear, you have a lot of self-doubt, you might want to consider casting a circle. Now, if you're new, you probably are already doing this, because I think every Wicca 101, Witchcraft 101 book talks about casting a protective circle. It's definitely part of the Wiccan ritual liturgy. And so most people automatically do this, I believe. So when you cast a protective circle, you're casting an energetic circle that will keep your energy in and allow other energies to stay out of it. You can program your circle so that some energies can come in or some energies can be like pushed out. I mean, I feel like that's a whole nother like topical live stream, but you have that option of creating that circle. And while I personally don't feel like it's every time I do a spell, I don't need to cast a circle. That's not part of what I do in my personal practice. But if you're new, it's a good practice to get into, and it can help with that fear and self-doubt, because if you start feeling that, it will stay in your circle. Okay, it won't, the spirits or whatever might be freaking you out on the outside, and you are protected on the inside. So just the act of casting that circle can help take away some of that fear, some of that self-doubt, some of that resistance. Okay? All right, just a couple other things. Do not summon something you cannot banish. There are people who want to summon demons or summon elementals, not elements, elementals, or other creatures, or whatever. If you don't know, don't bring up something you can't put back, basically. Unless you learn how to banish something, it's not a good idea to summon things. I think it's a little bit different when we talk about like element energies, because they are like more gentle. They're not like a creature. Like an elemental is different from when we're calling in the element. Elemental energies are not the same thing as elemental. An elemental is a specific type of spirit that is tied to an element. So we've got the undines for water, and the salamanders for fire, and gnomes for earth, and sylphs for air, right? So these are the elementals. And they are like the primal element energy made manifest. So it's kind of like energy without a brain. So if you are like, I'm going to summon the undines, you might flood your basement. You might wake up and find that your basement is flooded. So there's not a lot of control with that. Unless it's something that you're studying and you have a plan. Plans are always good, right? So unless that's something that you were doing on purpose for a specific reason, don't just be like, oh, I'm going to summon this, I'm going to summon that, etc. Just be really careful. And if you do ask for somebody to come forward, make sure you have gratitude and thank them, or, banish them, depending on what it is that you're doing. So when we call the goddess, when we evoke the goddess to come into our ritual and share, the ritual with us, whatever it is, if that's something that you do, you're not summoning her, you're asking her to come be present. I would never I would never say I'm going to go ahead and summon a goddess, because who the fuck am I? But you still want to make sure that you're like, hey, thanks, I'm done with the ritual. You know, you can go, you can stay, whatever it is that you want to say, but just make sure that you do have some sort of spiritual boundaries when it comes to, you know, inviting element energy in, or, you know, goddess energy in. Make sure, like, you know, you might be calling, hey, I invite, you know, how we call the quarters, you know, I invite the earth element in, blah, 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 whatever you're going to say. And at the end, you're always like, I release the element of earth. I like to say release instead of dismiss, because dismiss sounds really dismissive and not very polite. And if I want that energy to come back, I really feel like gratitude and politeness goes a long way. For deities and for whatever else energies that you're bringing in. So last but not least, if you are new to banishing anything, or you're kind of nervous, there is one banishing ritual that I have found that always works. And that is the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. So you can easily find this online. I'm sure there are YouTube videos now with people doing it to show you how it actually is performed. It does use Judeo-Christian concepts, like there are archangels, and there are like the 4 names of God. So there are some of those concepts. So if you're not comfortable with that at all, there are a lot of people who have like real problems with the church. That might not be the ritual for you, or you might be able to kind of rewrite it and have it still work. But it's always worked for me. And with that ritual, it actually just kind of banishes all of the energy in your space. So like, not just, oh, negative energy, like that's kind of like a smoke cleansing thing, but it will take care of all of the energy in your space, make it a blank slate, and then you can just build up all that good energy again. So that is basically it. That is like wording 101, ritual and ethereal safety. So I hope you enjoyed this video. And that's it. So I guess I will see you guys next week, and I will talk to you later. Bye.